And if you don't have any, then we can go to bed.
Well, we were discussing at dinner why people tend to get sick, lots of sicknesses during retreats.
You notice that, have you? Is it, you think?
Coughs and
Well,
virgins.
I've got a feeling I think we can know in our own lives, if you make an effort to do something, you're stretching yourself, right? So there's bound to be a result, isn't there? I mean, even you go to the gym, look how exhausted you get. It's the same kind of thing. I think mentally, if you're stretching yourself,
Okay.
working on your mind, that's kind of really powerful. If one of our friends, a monk who's been a monk for like 40 years, a serious meditator, 3-year, 4-year retreats, really intensive. And so the logic we have is, as you practice, you must get better, that's how we feel, kind of naively, we think, you must be getting better. In one sense, of course you are. But at some point, he was out of his brain with extra levels of unbelievable rage and like arrogance. He thought he was going crazy, And he went to Lama Zopa. I mentioned this, I'm sure. And Rinpoche laughed and laughed and said, fantastic, the dirt has to come out. So if you have the Buddhist view about the mind, which is like ancient, and not just this life, but unbelievable amount of unconscious, so much buried away. So as soon as you start working on your mind, what do you think you're going to do? You're bringing up the rubbish, aren't you? It's like inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. That's what I meant, even just coming up here. Forget the physical stress, but just even what we're trying to do. We're not just doing stress. We're not just doing trekking. We also want to do a retreat, look at our minds. Then it's necessary purification, necessarily. That's what I mentioned before we left, What else, people? You can't expect much out of me tonight, I'm afraid. You're going to have to ask me questions. Yeah, you go. Darling, yeah.
I had this discussion with someone about, we were talking about how does karma run out with particular people, and how does that work?
I mean, I can't possibly answer technically exactly, but a certain amount, the strength of it, karma runs out, things finish. We know with relationships. When you're a little girl, you might be in love with one little other girl for for the first year at school, and you don't forget her name after that. Some people for 40 years. So it's right, how much you put into the petrol tank is how much you get out of it. So there's a very strong relationship from the past. Even if you want to escape a person, you can't. So I think the fruit is always related to the cause. So if there's a big fruit, the cause must have been very strong, isn't it? And there's some casual relationships, but maybe in this life, somebody you have a casual relationship might be a really intense one next life. So it really depends on the time and the place. Relationships run out, jobs run out, everything runs out. And that's why in this life, when you're having problems with somebody, we think you just get divorced and it's all over. No, it's not. You've got to clean up your act properly, because you're going to meet him again and again. So you've got to make it good when you meet him again. You can't just avoid it. That doesn't mean make it good with them. They mightn't do their side. You've got to do your side of it, clean up your part of it. So when you meet again, it'll be fine for you, That's really important. What else, people?
I know you mentioned it last night, Robina, but can you just speak a little bit about how to think about, in relationship to karma, how to think about people when you see people in this life suffering, like young children, or that seems so unfair, This came up.
This is the commonest one for us, isn't it? It's the biggest one, because we have an assumption that we all began in our mother's womb. We have an assumption that bad things shouldn't happen to good people. This is the deepest assumption I think we have, and that we assume good things should happen to us as well as other people. So I think before we even think about karma, we should look at those assumptions, and those assumptions are attachment and aversion. This is very ingrained. These are the main voices of ego grasping, the main voices of the way ego works, and they're so normal for us. We never ever question. But if we really look at those assumptions, it's very kind of humbling. So the main delusion in life is attachment, which is the craving to get what I want every second. It sounds really brutal, but it's so spontaneous, it's so ingrained, it's so automatic. We don't even give it a name. It's just automatic. We think of attachment as, I like chocolate cakes. It's a really gross, obvious level of it. It's just at the level of assumption. It's the motor that drives every single thing we think and do and say, Here, for example, because as soon as you're slightly cold, attachment immediately tries to adjust it and get something to stop the cold from coming. Every time we don't get what we want, that's attachment driving it. Constant craving, deep inside, totally instinctive. So if you look at even begin to look at as an assumption, which is all these thoughts are, it's an assumption. To say I want something to be a certain way is very reasonable. I want to be warm. I don't want to be cold. That's okay. That's attachment and aversion. But the idea of attachment is when it doesn't get what it wants, we're shocked. We're outraged. You know, especially when something bad happens. There's an assumption in attachment that somehow we don't deserve it. And we ought to look at that. I mean, there's no logic to that whatsoever. If you look in your, like I think I might have mentioned, I say this all the time, if you look in your bank account, you don't say, how dare there be no dollars in my bank account? You'd never say that, because the operative word is it's my bank account. And you know if it's my bank account, what's in it is what you put there. You'd never look in your garden and say, who put weeds in my garden? Because you know it's your garden. But we don't own our life like that. It's a good analogy. We really believe that someone else made us. We really believe that someone else is responsible. Attachment really believes I'm an innocent victim who didn't get asked to born, and then things happen to unfairly. So we have all these layers of assumptions that the Buddha says we have to start questioning. They're just total nonsense. So there's no logic. What is the logic saying I deserve happiness? There's no logic to it. You only deserve something if you cause it. You only deserve dollars in your bank if you earn them. You only don't deserve weeds if you don't put them there. So there's no logic to I deserve. I want happiness. That's valid. But we extrapolate and we think I deserve, and that's when we get so shocked and outraged when I get suffering and I don't deserve it. And then we look into the world, we see what we think are innocent people, like little animals and a few children. Then we're shocked. How dare bad things happen? They don't deserve it. So on the face of it, if you take the view that you're born in your mother's womb and your mother made you, which is the view of the materialist world, that's our assumption, that's the philosophy. We all take it for granted, we don't question it. Then of course you're going to get upset when bad things happen to you or other people because we don't deserve it. But there's no logic, Buddha says, no logic whatsoever. If it happens to you, you must deserve it. If there's a flower in your garden, you must have sown it. If there's a weed in your garden, you must have put it there. So that's the logic of karma. If it happens to you, you must have sown the seed. Of course, we don't remember it. That's the logic of it. So that's irrefutable if you take that as a basis, karma as your basis. But you've got to choose to take it as your basis first, you know. That everything that happens to you is the fruit of an action you did necessarily, because your life is your garden. So this is just really demands rigor and discipline, and it's really outrageous, because every second, attachment's this little kind of arrogant little, it's got this enormous kind of, attachment's like this, what's the word? It's got an incredible sense of entitlement. We've got a sense of entitlement. That's what when we think of very selfish people, that's what we think. They're very entitled, you know. That's what attachment is. And we've all got it. We're driven by it. And it's an assumption deep in our bones that only good things should happen. And when they don't, how dare bad things happen? And Buddha would argue that's a false assumption. So we've got to question. And the logic of it is the logic of karma, that your mind came from before, and that necessarily whatever you experience is the fruit of what you did. So this is, I mean, these words are so simple, but they're beyond profound to have an experience of it, because these delusions are so deep, they're so instinctive, you know. This is why it's not going to change overnight. This stuff's kind of, talk about lifetimes, and it's utterly instinctive. It's utterly instinctive because we practice it for so long. Instinct for the Buddha is because you practice it for so long. It happens automatically. And that's why we take the view that as soon as you come into this life, we can see some children are wackos, some children are psychopathic. We don't want to think about it. We can't believe it's possible. But of course it's possible. Hitler's mother's not to blame for that ridiculous man. It's absurd to think that. He came with his own tendencies. We all come with our own tendencies. Even as a theory, that's so profound, because at least it answers, why do I feel this? Why does he do that? Otherwise there's no explanation. There's none whatsoever. With the materialist view, there isn't. It's just falls short, you know. That's a tough one. And most Buddhists don't even like karma. They don't think about it, don't learn it, don't think about it, don't want to know about it. So from the bigger picture in Buddhism, you can't live without karma, because it's the Buddha's view of the entire world. It's the whole explanation of the whole universe. Why anything? Why an animal? Why a dog? Why human? Why anything, you know? And I got a feeling we all ask those questions. We always say why. When bad things happen, the first thing we say is, why me? When bad things happen out there, the first thing we say is, why? So we all say why. We have to, within that demands, we find an answer, you know. We should look at the answers that are available. We've got the Christian answer, the Muslim answer, the materialist answer, we've got Buddha's answer. If you've got one, great, go for it. So I think it's up to us to look at it. But it's a tough one.
I have a follow-up question on that. When the earthquake happened here, Rinpoche said something about like collective karma.
That's right.
Okay, would you talk a bit about
That's
that?
that's easy. We do things together, don't we? We do things together, right?
Yeah.
So we experience the results together.
Okay.
We've got a karmic connection. This group here, we probably won't meet again in this group in this life, right? But we clearly can't. It can't be a random group.
Right.
We've obviously done something like this. You know, could be 1,000 lifetimes ago, 50 lifetimes ago, and so we're experiencing the fruits of it together.
So the earthquake.
Whoever was there at that time, at that moment, experiencing that particular earthquake, got some strong collective karmic result. Like all the Tibetans have got a collective karma.
Okay.
The Jews have got a collective karma. Good things happen, collective karma. When good things happen, like a country, some countries are really blessed, got a beautiful environment, there's no violence, you know, that's collective karma of those people. From some virtue in the past, that they're all born in the same place and get the collective result of it. I think 'cause we're very social beings, aren't we? We live with other beings all the time, don't we? So we cause together and we experience things together. Isn't it?
Makes sense.
Mm. What else, people? Nothing came up today?
Yeah.
What?
You know what you said yesterday about
Yes.
all those awful negative thoughts?
That's right. And it's true, isn't it? That's right.
Oh,
There you go. That's
yeah,
right.
It was kind of, what am I doing this for? Why
That's
am I
right.
doing this?
That's right.
And even things like when people were saying to me, "Are you okay?"
That's right.
Saying that to me.
That's right.
They must think I'm so useless.
There you go. That's
Behind
right.
my back, you know. and I had to kind of, I was saying things to myself, well, you could do it, it'll be all right, fine, you're
That's
supposed to
right.
come here.
That's
you
right.
know. But the only thing that I really found that made the difference was just saying mantras.
Oh, really?
Just saying
So,
loads of
I know,
mantras.
yeah, it's just deflected.
Because it kind of
That's right.
quite
No, that's right. There you go. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
No.
but yeah,
And that's the one, that's where we've got to catch it, you know. And this is the whole thing about,
it was awful.
and this is exactly how attachment works, because attachment wants to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Attachment is this junkie in us that only wants to be comfortable. I mean, I think of going up on these treks, and I go on about it, I don't really mean to. But the only reason I find them stressful is because it's not comfortable. I like my warmth, I like my comfort. I'd rather walk on a flat concrete, you know. Because if you get pleasure from walking in mountains, you don't mind the pain. If there's pleasure, I didn't mind doing karate, you know, kung fu and karate. I'd train 3 hours a day until I was dropping from exhaustion, but I was in heaven. So if you're attached to the activity, if you're attached to walking up mountains, you don't mind it, you know. So I was attached to kung fu, so I didn't mind the pain. So it really just shows attachment wins the day every time. So if you're not attached to walk up on a mountain, do you understand? Very interesting, isn't it? You managed. You stayed perky.
Got here.
You got here.
I'm not halfway down the hill somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's the way, at quite a subtle level, the way attachment works is, it's this assumption every second that I must get nice feelings. That's its job, and it's its job to find the nice things that'll make the nice feelings. And then the millisecond the unhappy feeling comes, then attachment shifts its focus and now tries to find a way to be free of the unhappy thing. That's what it does all day. So it's constantly working to get the nice thing, and the second the bad thing comes, it shifts the focus to be removed from the unnice thing. And that's how we live our lives. No wonder we're all neurotic, you know. No wonder we all get miserable, depressed, go crazy, kill people. Because that's the two main voices in the head. And that's why if we even begin to practice, it's in the Bodhisattva path especially, they teach this whole approach to learning to be glad to have problems. Learning to greet the problem, learning to shift your mind, shift your interpretation. Instead of calling it bad and then getting miserable, you call it good, you know.
I was driving over. This is my mind. This is my mind making me feel like this.
There you
Here
go.
it was. But
Oh, it was your mind, that's right,
it
exactly.
kind of, yeah, took a while to get.
Exactly, I know. And this is our life practice. This is really the essence of being a Buddhist, is this. And the thing is, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. These delusions that go to the most unbelievably subtle level. It'd be a long time before we're free of attachment and aversion. But we can work at it, chip away, you know, bit by bit. And the result is happiness. That's the point. That's the simple point for the Buddha. We think happiness is what when attachment gets what it wants. The pleasant feeling, the warmth, you know. But Buddha says, no, mistake. Happiness is what you get when you give up attachment. That's as simple as that. But that's the job, you know. And that's a millisecond by millisecond job. And it takes a long time because it goes to really subtle levels. Isn't it?
So what would love without attachment look like?
Okay, you would. If you have gotten to the point where you've given up attachment, then you'd be at the point when you'd have love for every single person. The way we are now, We divide the world into friends, enemies and strangers. That's it. There's no fourth category, right? So when you really give up attachment, you would necessarily have love for every single person equally. Even though you might have your own babies and your own husband, you don't get confused and think the next door neighbour's your baby and bring them home. But you'd wish them to be happy in exactly the same way as you'd wish your baby to be happy. There couldn't be a difference. It's not possible. Now that's insane. You can't even conceive of that, Because the only people we love now are attachment, the people we're attached to. Therefore, if you really didn't have attachment, you would not have anger, you would not get depression, you would not get anxious, you would not get depressed, you would not get unhappy, you would not get aggressive, you would not have low self-esteem, you would not have any of those other qualities, because they all come from attachment. So you'd be an astonishing person, blissful, extraordinary, wise, joyful. That's how to be. And by that point, you don't need relationships. You wouldn't bother. I mean, you love everybody anyway. The only purpose for a relationship is to be beneficial to them. You don't need anything from your side. But look at what motivates us. All our relationships is from our side. Even if there's girlfriends, and boyfriends, people at work, we always only want a relationship to fulfill our needs, And as long as they fulfill my needs, I'm prepared to fulfill their needs. But it doesn't last long. It sounds a bit depressing because it sounds like we're so self-centered, but that's true, we are. If we compare with how we can be, that's the point. But for the world, I mean, we're defined as, in our culture, we're defined as social beings, aren't we? Many people recently, I was very curious, I've never thought of it, but people have said, how do you know who you are unless you have a relationship with someone? That's the way we think in our culture. The only way to know about yourself is in reference to others, and that's our culture. Whereas the Buddha's one is you've got to know yourself by looking inside. And that's weird for us. Think of a person going off to retreat for 2 years, we think they're mentally ill. We can't conceive of what they'd be doing, It's sort of like peculiar. So the view of the mind's so very different. It's quite shocking, actually. What else, people? I'm not very inspired, John. I'm so sorry. I can't just rave on. It's been 20 minutes already. So other questions? Any old thing that you'd like to ask me? Yes, go, darling. Go.
In the way of karma, this valley was a gem. I mean, it still is a gem, but like today, there's a lot of traffic on the trail. And
you mean people walking up and down?
Yeah. And where are we going with that?
What do you mean?
I mean, if we keep all this traffic of people going through here, it seems like we're just going to ruin this place.
That's just the nature of everything, isn't it? That's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing that with the planet.
But as soon as you have more than one person in a place, you're still going to start disturbing it. What can you do? I mean, I'm sure, New York City was a very nice place before humans came along. Right. What can you say, But I mean, that's the nature of humanity, isn't it? Whereas if you think of Tibet, before the communists came along, I mean, it's stuck in medieval times, really. There were 6 million Tibetans and 1 million were in the monasteries. 99% were Tibetans. were Buddhists. They didn't have such a thing as environmentalism or imbalance of the elements or starvation, because they all lived in morality, mostly lived according to the vows of morality. They therefore weren't very greedy. It must have been some naughty people. So the whole planet was not disturbed, And now you understand, because there was no attachment and no aversion. But as soon as there's attachment and aversion, and then jealousy and depression and all the rest, then that's what makes a mess. So it's inevitable, isn't it? So what to do? Practice virtue. So what's the solution, though? You're suggesting what? Is there a suggestion in your question?
No, I don't have a solution, but it seems like maybe there should be a limit to how many people come up this valley.
That's what they do in Bhutan, isn't it? There's a limit. Yeah. They really limit tourism.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea. It's not going to happen in Nepal. There's no such good government, I don't think. I don't think it's so organised. I think in Bhutan maybe it is. It's inevitable. What can you do? You've got to see the good side as well, don't we? What else, people?
Venerable, there's a question here.
Yes, darling. Talk to me.
I just had a question. I was reading the introduction to pilgrimages, and experience difficulties when you're on pilgrimage, and I was just
Well, the same reason as before.
Huh?
As the same point that we brought up before, yeah.
Yeah.
That Sharon brought up.
it's like a purification sort of thing, just dealing with your own mind when things don't happen how you want them to.
But isn't that the same point that she brought up? Is that the point you're bringing up?
About the illness, is that
What Sharon mentioned. Difficulties when you do retreat.
yeah,
She brought that up.
similar.
Same. So is it a question or a statement?
Oh, it's just a question.
And the question was?
Oh, it's not really a question.
No, I think it's the same point that Sharon made.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. What else, people?
Can I just, sorry, I was talking to children today when we were walking about karma in a global way, in the way the world's going these days. And I know it's a cliche, but, you know, environments, politics, right wing, you know, Trump, in Australia, the politicians we have, the way the world's going. Is there a pattern to that, do you think? Is that like a karmic thing as well? And I'm not a Buddhist, so I'm learning.
I don't quite get the meaning of the question.
Do you think there's a direction that...
I don't think it's rocket science.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't the way we all behave telling us where we're going? So there's the answer.
Do you think, from what you can, I don't know if you can look into the future at all or whatever, do you think there's more hope for the world in the future? Things that
But I think if you see a company that's working really ineffectively with a mean boss and people disharmonious, you don't need to be a scientist to say see where the company's going.
Yeah.
You don't need to be kind of clairvoyant. It's obvious.
I suppose
Well, the whole planet's obvious.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it obvious?
Yeah, it's obvious. But I just wonder I don't know, you can't look into the future.
But I'm saying that. You can look into the future. But that's my point.
Right.
If you see a garden that's a mess and no one's taking care of it, you can see what it's going to look like in 20 years. That's not rocket science. So if you look at the world now, see there's more attachment, more confusion, more violence, more paranoia, more guns, more wars. Is that what you're suggesting? Well, then where do you think it's leading? But where do you think it's leading?
Yeah, where do you think
But where do you think it's leading? It's sort of fairly obvious, isn't it?
Well, I can see changes slowly happening.
Where? Well, I mean, where?
I mean,
Among a few people.
Yeah, among
Yeah, there's always a few people. Every century you come, they're going to find a few people who are nice.
Yeah. I think it was when someone else asked about karma coming to an end. Sorry, I remember we were talking about...
finished, but when the karma finishes.
Yeah, yeah.
But that means that's probably when the planet collapses. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think it's rocket science. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's okay, thank you.
I mean, people talk about, special times coming. You hear that all the time. I mean, I think it's a bit romantic. I don't know. Not being depressing or anything. All you can do is keep going, knowing you can die tomorrow, and create the causes to get another decent body in the next life, and keep moving. All we can do is that. And then do what we can to help while we're here. What else, people?
Robina, can you say something about, I was wondering about where you draw the line between when you're just chatting with people and when it turns into
Well, it's really easy. If you think about the two wings of the bird, the wisdom wing is all the work you do on yourself, right? So you think of it this way, to be really rigorous. The only reason to talk from that point of view is to help you get clear what you're thinking. And the only reason to talk from the compassion wing point of view is for the sake of the person you're talking to. So if you use that as your guideline, you'll be quiet most of the time. No, really, and when we're in social situations, the only reason to talk is for the sake of the other. There can't be any other reason. Because you can't start having because if you're going to sort out something in your own mind, there could be that. If you're having a conversation with each other about these things, you have a conversation and you say, well, the question, that's sorting out something. That's fantastic. But then you have to know the person you're talking to can help you. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And then the other reason to talk is for the sake of the other person. And if you really think of it, there's no other reason. So if you get really rigorous, that'll cause you to make the right decisions. Because so much of the time we're driven by attachment and we're nervous, and as soon as we've got people around, we've kind of this compulsion to talk. And it's all very subtle. We don't notice what's going on inside. And when you hear other people, when we hear other people talking, you can hear it's also self-centered. You understand? But that's how it is with ourselves, because we're so cautious, we're so anxious to speak, say something, to be heard. And half the time it's just useless. So I think that way. The reason to talk from your own point of view is to sort something out. And the other reason is for the sake of the other person. That's really sort of pretty straightforward, really, isn't it? Yeah.
So that just makes me think, I've been laughing a lot with these people.
Good.
Which is just
Means that's fantastic. Yeah, that's right. It means you're...
therapeutic, and it's a great way to get to know people as well. So my question is, following on from what you just said, the two wings of the bird, and the only reason to speak to people, where does play and
Same thing, no difference. But there's no difference. This doesn't have to be serious.
yeah,
Who says you can't laugh and chat? You listen to the llamas talk, they're falling off their chairs laughing. But it's always meaningful. So it doesn't mean you can't be, it's become spontaneous, that you're listening to another person, you're hearing their story, you're cracking jokes about it. That's being kind to the other person, right there.
so if you're doing the work,
That's what I'm saying. It'll be very natural, and you will be having fun, necessarily. It won't be serious.
you can express
Oh, I'm not going to talk because I don't want to be self-centered. You know, that's ridiculous. You'll be able to have fun very easily because you listen to the other person. And you're joining into the kind of the general energy, and you're cracking jokes and not always trying to have yourself heard.
yeah,
That's the big compulsion. You know.
yeah.
Do you understand? Then it can be fun. So keep having fun. It's wonderful. What else, people? Ask a question, come on.
Okay. When from the back to karma,
Yeah.
and in the hypothetical case, I die and get reborn as a slug.
Yes.
As a slug, how can I be a good slug and generate good karma?
You can't. Nothing you can do. You're
So
lost.
I'm as a slug forever.
No. You've got lots of millions of other karmic seeds in there for good rebirths, but you just kind of miss the plane. You're in a bit of trouble. Because as a slug, you can do nothing but just do what slugs do, which is only negative, only disturbed, only suffering. But you've got all these other karmic seeds, and when you were human, that can help you, cause you to be a human again. So you just have to hope you meet a nice Buddhist who says a mantra in your ear. If slugs have ears, I don't know. So you can trigger one of your virtuous karmic seeds again. That's the best you can do.
Okay.
Yeah, because as an animal, you can't do much, except be more negative and more
I'll
suffering.
give up trying to figure out how to be a good slug then.
That's right, no bother. Just avoid slug mummies, that's all. Well, you could yum in that maybe best kind of possible, but no benefit. And this is, again, that's very shocking for us to think about how animals are suffering. We don't think that, you know. But like I mentioned, I think, Lama Zopa said, I mentioned this, just for a moment, if we had the direct insight, a genuine experience of the mind of our own dog, our precious little dog, the mental suffering will be beyond bearable. And what that means is the suffering of ego grasping, attachment, aversion, and all the other delusions, because they can't access any virtues. With us, we have all these same delusions, but our saving grace is our virtue. That's what gives us any sanity at all, any happiness at all, any virtue at all, is our virtues. But they're dragged down and polluted by all the delusions, whereas the poor animals have no access to any of no access to any virtue. So they're just living in total ego, living in total paranoia and fear and narrow-mindedness and delusions. And it's not even evident to us. We can't see that. We see a cute cat, we don't think it's suffering. We even see people we can't see suffering. So we're kind of very deluded. So, you know, the Buddha's view of what suffering is quite subtle. Yeah.
On YouTube, you see many videos where animals take really care of other animals, even completely different.
That's right, that
species.
happens, doesn't it?
So it seems like there is virtue happening in
There's
some
what?
animals' minds
There's what?
as well, right?
There's what?
Some virtue happening.
It's just instinct, but it's only just because of karmic connection. I mean, most mothers even don't create much virtue with their children because it's mostly attachment. So if animals forget it. It's just because of karmic connection. Even like you see the picture of a lion taking care of a mouse. You see pictures like that. This is because of the karmic connection of those two minds. It overrides the lion-mouse thing, and they're just some karmic connection between them which draws them together, the attachment. And so they're nice to each other. The only reason we do anything nice to each other now is because of attachment. I mean, look at mothers who don't like their babies. That's why they kill them. We think they're monsters. They just don't have attachment, that's all. Do you understand? I mean, imagine you having a child that's a stranger, who's really horrible, deluded, who's given to you in your house to take care of, and there's no affection there. Of course there's no affection, because there's no attachment. So we don't realise how much most of our virtue is just through attachment. Most humans are nice to each other, just like the lion, same. But it's not much virtue. It's very weak virtue. So when virtue is not driven by delusions, that's when it's powerful. And animals have no choice. I mean, the mummy lion, when she's hungry, she'll eat the baby. You understand? And when a human person even is really threatened, they'll be terrible to their children. This is the way delusions are, you know. So it's mostly instinct, mostly just habit, because of the karmic connection.
If you're a human practitioner who has really strong bodhicitta, and then your good karma will, how do you say, wears out, you get reborn as an animal.
Well, sorry, well, what?
Your
Say it
good
again.
Karma wears out. So you have had the karma to be born human, you create a lot of virtue.
But you just said you had bodhicitta.
Yeah,
Well, how could you possibly have it run out? Excuse me, you have no idea what bodhicitta means if you think that.
yeah, let's say, how do you say, a lot of compassion.
Yeah, but even that's impossible to get an animal birth if you really have got compassion.
No, first you are human, you have a lot of compassion, so you get a very strong habit to care of others, to not kill and things like that. Then you get reborn as a dog.
But my whole point is, if you're really practicing virtue, you won't get reborn as a dog. That's the whole point. Why do you assume you will? It's very weird.
But there's a lot of back negative karma from the past, no?
Yeah, but the whole point of practicing virtue is to override your negative karma. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but does it always work like
Well, if you really practice it, of course it will. It's logical. Yes, of course it is. That's the whole point about what practice is. It's not just some kind of secret law somewhere. If you keep practicing virtue, virtue will bring the results. That's the whole point. That's why if you listen to the teachings properly, you first purify, you first don't create negative, then you purify, then you practice virtue. It is logical. Karma is a logical law. Of course things can happen, things can change. You can stop practicing virtue. Things can change. But if you practice so much virtue, that brings its results. It's very simple. If you're really practicing, my point is. If you're just pretending. Otherwise, what's the point of bothering? Why bother if it's going to be like that? Why bother?
I would just have thought you have some intermediate negative rebirth.
What?
I would have thought you have some phases where you have to go to the lower realms.
What do you mean have to?
Because of your past karma.
But of course you do. But okay. There are weeds in your garden right now, and there are potential for flowers. If you keep growing the flowers, it is logical. If you do your garden every day, no one's surprised if in 50 years you have a good garden, because you're doing your weeding every day. Well, it's the same here. That's the whole point of practice, to get ahead of the game. If it's just this kind of fatalistic, well, negative karma, why bother? Why bother working so hard at being virtuous? Why bother if it can't bring results, if it's not certain? At a certain point, it's only when you realize emptiness that it's certain. You can even still lose bodhicitta. But I mean, things happen. But generally speaking, the whole point is to keep practicing, keep pulling out the weeds and growing the flowers. And that's what all the instructions are about. Do you see?
Good news.
Otherwise, it might be hard depressing. Why bother, Do you understand?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that means you stop practicing. I mean, karma is very complex, but the whole point is to get ahead of the game. And that's why very first level, stop doing more negative action, then purify your past negative. That's why if you don't do all that properly, then you'll be right then. That's why you've got to do purification. As Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to do it every day. You've got to put atomic bombs every single day on all your weeds, all the seeds you haven't even ripened yet. That's why you've got to have a proper practice, a proper valid practice. Just being mindful every day, thinking you're being a nice person, that's not practice. You never get ahead like that. You understand? All right, what else? people? Chuck? Nothing?
Got nothing.
Nothing? So everyone had a good day today, generally speaking? Yeah? It was easy, walking up?
I do have one.
What's that, Chuck? Come on.
Where did the helicopter land?
Oh, about 4 hours away. I had to walk 4 hours to get here. Oh, no, where's Amber? Is he gone? Okay. He says the person who drove, what's his name? Mahesh. He said it was like 5 minutes, but for me it was at least 25 to 30. I mean, it was huge. That's why I destroyed my knees again. No, I didn't really, but it was quite a way down. For me, quite a way down. But I'm fine. I've got to go down there again tomorrow morning. So I can all meet you at Monjo. What else, people? It's only 20 to 8. It's early.
Can I ask another?
Yeah, go, darling.
As I said, I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm interested. You know, when you said about it's important to have a daily practice, for someone like me, what does that mean?
That mean the bare minimum. That's why in the kind of the step-by-step way, the bare minimum is at least make an aspiration not to harm sentient beings. This is stupendously amazing. It doesn't sound like a practice. It just sounds like, oh, that's just what your mum would tell you. But it's the logic of it is because you've got to at least first stop sowing more weeds. Do you understand? At least that. And if you live a life genuinely aspiring every day to control your body and speech and not harm sentient beings, that's stupendous. Then next, you do a bit of purification. We'll go through all those things of the karmic seeds that are already there. And then on top of that, you can be good to people as well. I mean, wow. And there's extra powerful ways of doing all that. And then adding on to that, if you want to do some kind of practice that involves mantras or a bit of meditation, that's like a bonus. You understand? And then basically, as you keep moving, if you do continue to be a Buddhist, you keep adding pieces on, you're adding components, into that infrastructure. But that's the fundamental. Control your body, control your speech, don't kill. If you start getting connected to being Buddhist, you want to become a Buddhist, then you take vows of not killing, and that's even more powerful. You do purification at the end of every day. If you had a life like that alone, unbelievable. Guaranteed you'll get another decent human body when you die. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And you keep moving, Then you can keep adding more to it. More practice, more things, and you just study a bit of the Buddhism and you learn a bit more, and you do a bit more of this, a bit more meditation, then you keep adding pieces to it. It's very progressive. Does that make sense? Yeah. What, Chuck? You had something? What happened, Chuck? Nothing?
No.
So I think this will do tonight. Just have a few thoughts for bit of food for thought before we go to sleep. But make a commitment yourselves when you wake up to do something in your own mind. Even 3 minutes, thinking a certain thing. I'm going to wake up today. I'm going to do the most I can to control my body and speech. I'm going to be able to look at my mind. I'll see what I can get out of today. Even a few little baby aspirations yourself. That's a practice. Right there. Put yourself on the right track. That I'd ask you to do. Do you understand? In your own mind. It's really good. It's a really good discipline. And then you come out breakfast. Then you go again. You do a few things on the road. Yeah? And then we'll see if I'm more fun by tomorrow night. Okay?
Can I just...
Yes, darling.
So right, it just keeps going on in my head. Following on from what you were asking, you said, one of the first things to do is to make a commitment not to harm any sentient being. Tell me the definition of sentient being.
Well, the ones you got the Tibetan word for sentient being is interesting. It's mind possessor, sentient. So creatures, ants, rats, worms, fleas, men. I'm not joking. Your ex-husband. I mean, it's hard to know what isn't.
So somewhere there's a grey area between what's...
No, there's no grey area at all. No, there's no grey area. There's not a grey area. No, it's not a grey area. But we can't tell by looking. Now, for the Buddha, very clearly, a plant's not a mind possessor. A plant, a rock, a table. The world consists of the 4 elements. They still use that model in Buddhism. It's made of the 4 elements. So wherever there are, and the whole universe is the 4 elements, right? There's air, water, earth, and fire. And so all sentient beings, where you could say there's a conducive environment, wherever there are the 4 elements, is going to be where there are sentient beings. So our body, we know it's like a living zoo, isn't it? Your mouth's like an ecosystem, millions of real living beings in your entire body. So wherever you're going to find trees and flowers and tables and microphones, you're going to find sentient beings. But this table itself, which is the 4 elements, same as these 4 elements, right? But the difference between that table and this 4 elements here, this is conjoined with a consciousness. But this table isn't. The flower isn't. A tree isn't. But there are millions of sentient beings there. So a sentient being has its own mind. It's got Buddha nature. Gets born from life to life. A table can't get reborn as a human, in other words. It can't be your mum or something. Well, that's a tree or a flower as well. It's a living stuff, but it's not a consciousness. That's what Buddha would say. But it's hard to see. We can't tell. I'm just telling you what the Buddha... So you do your best by, if something wriggles, you think it's human, you try not to harm it. That's the main thing.
Bacteria in my mouth.
I mean, the sentient beings, just by walking every day, you're slaughtering creatures. By drinking, even eating vegetarian foods, billions of creatures have died for it. You can't win. But at least to have the wish when you meet one, I do not want to harm it. You cultivate this attitude of not wanting to harm living beings. It's very powerful. It kind of guides you in a direction. It's very powerful. Do you understand?
Yes. I do
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
Good. Okay. Perfect. All right, people. So we just think how a wonderful day we've had. One day walking on our little pilgrimage on the way up to Lawudo to do some meditation, to do some practice, to think of the meaning of life, to look at ourselves, to develop our qualities, and to help others. How amazing! Jang chub sem chog rinpoche ma ke panam ke gu chig ke panyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pa ba shog gewa di nyudo dag lama sangye drub gyo ne drowa chikyang malu pa de sala go pa shog. Okie dokie. Thank you, people. Good night.